2, 1. Okay, we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sebastiano Toffaletti, European Digital SME Alliance. Welcome with us again at another episode of Digital SME Live. We are online every Friday and bring you the hottest topics in the digital and SME space as they are discussed in Europe. So I'm here today with two very distinguished guests. I have Willem Jonker, CEO of EIT Digital, the European Institute of Technology, and I have Stefan Mauer, who is co-founder of Atlas Intelligence. He is one of the very smart digital small and medium-sized enterprises we have in Europe. He is an IT security expert. So I'm very confident that with these two friends and speakers, we will have a very nice conversation today. So as you all know, we want to discuss about contact tracing apps for COVID-19. So the question we have, is this a solution or a threat? We definitely want to go into the topic of Europe's digital sovereignty. We want to know if we have the capacity to do this app ourselves, or we have to rely on US companies, Google and Apple. As you may know, the European Digital SME Alliance launched some weeks ago when the COVID crisis was on, a campaign called Digital Solutions for COVID-19. It's a campaign which is now online, and it is a catalog of solutions developed by European SMEs and startups to tackle the crisis, to mitigate the effects of the COVID-19 crisis on citizens, on businesses, on public authorities. Of course, this does not only include contact tracing apps, because these are solutions that go from smart working, e-learning, telemedicine, etc. All solutions that we are using, the people and businesses are using to work as effective as possible during the crisis. The campaign indeed also includes some solutions that have to do with contact tracing, but we are not going to go we're going to discuss about these specific solutions. We only want to discuss today about the overall context, whether we have a privacy issue, whether these apps are good for the health of the citizens, and what we could do at EU level, even though the issue is very, very often in the hands of national governments, as you will hear. So to start with, I'd like to ask a question to Willem Jonker, who, besides being a former vice president for research at Philips, he is currently the CEO of EIT Digital, EIT, the European Institute of Technology. So Willem, maybe you would like to introduce yourself, and especially what EIT Digital is and why you are yourself and your organization involved in this topic.
Thank you very much, Sebastiano. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's a very good initiative that you are doing with these broadcasts. It's also, you told about the initiatives where you stimulate SMEs to contribute with solution against COVID-19 that your organization is running. And I think that is very important because SMEs play an important role when it comes to innovation. And that brings me also to what is EIT Digital. EIT Digital is a pan-European organization that is focused on innovation. It's a European organization. We have locations in 18 locations in Europe. We're focusing on digital innovation to address societal challenges. And that probably also immediately explains why this topic for us is relevant, because if there is one immediate societal challenge is how to fight COVID-19. We've launched a couple of initiatives that's under the header Data Against COVID-19, because information data is very important when it comes to outbreak management of viruses. And that's actually where we are, why we are here. EIT Digital has a lot of expertise, or technical expertise, but also expertise about application, the user perspective, and a good relationship with authorities. And that's actually all the players that are important when it's about COVID-19. Focusing a bit on contact tracing. Why is contact tracing so important? Well, actually, contact tracing is so important because of the exponential behavior of the virus spread. And this is the famous R, and if the R it's above 1, then you have exponential spread, and then things go very fast, and that's surprisingly fast. And that means that it makes a big difference whether you are able to measure on hospital intake or you are able to measure immediately after infections are being determined. And if that's only 2 weeks difference, it makes an enormous difference in containing and localizing outbreaks and really fighting them at a local level rather than have to resort to total lockdown. So that's a bit what you see. I published a blog on this a couple of weeks ago, looking at what is now going on in Europe, and the title I used was "The European Struggle with these contact apps," because I think that's a little bit what we are witnessing. As such, you think, oh, it's a very simple thing. You need a simple tool to help the contact tracing. It's labor intensive. It's now mainly done manually. So could you not support it, for example, through mobile phones? And we also see in Asia these things happening. And the idea is very good. So, and I think it's very important that this technology gets deployed. At the same time, we see the struggle. And the struggle is actually has a couple of dimensions. First of all, we see a very fragmented approach in Europe. And I think we should elaborate a bit. That's not always the best way to go. We see that I think maybe a little bit to be expected, quite some pushback and concern in society around privacy. And finally, we see also technological challenges, which are actually of a double nature. On the one hand, is the technology appropriate? There's a lot of discussion about the specifics of Bluetooth and being useful. But there's also a little bit more broad topic here, and that is about technological choice and digital sovereignty. Because what we also observe is that European countries would like to go in a certain direction and then have to come into a debate with Apple and Google that teamed on a specific approach. And there you see that the picture becomes a broader picture than just the app, but it's also about digital sovereignty. So there's a lot of angles to this whole topic. And I think for setting a little bit the scene, this is introduction from my side.
Thank you very much indeed. You touched upon many different issues that are very important for this conversation. With that, I'd like also to ask Stefan Mauer, who's from an IT company, Atlas Intelligence. You specialize in IT security, to introduce yourself and your company, and also what do you think is important to take into account in this particular conversation.
Yeah, I'm Stefan Mauer. I co-founded Atlas Intelligence just a year ago. So we're a startup, but actually our experience of all our employees is from within other companies that are specialized in information security. So I took some of the smart guys, put them together, and we founded Atlas Intelligence. And to make our own approach in penetration testing and information security. So we're new but quite experienced. And as Wilhelm already mentioned, there are several dimensions. One is if such a tracing application will be adopted by the people, and I think you have to have big efforts in marketing and take actually some quite of money to give it big companies and give it experienced developers and make like a co-working to develop such a big approach if it's Europe-wide. You have to mention on the other hand side to in the end there needs to be a connection to the API of the health departments of the locals, And I think this is another thing that that can be difficult in developing such an app, because there are several countries with several different health departments, and the user can't say I'm infected, because if you give the user this chance, they will troll everything, and the whole thing is nothing worth. So it has to be signed by a department and proved officially, and so there needs to be automatic connection to this. And on the other hand side, there are several security aspects you need to focus on. My biggest concern is that there will be too many data collected that can be correlated. Even if the data is anonymous, it can be correlated very heavily. We saw this on the Strava app, where it was a jogging app you had on your arm, and
yes.
Well, there were people jogging in Afghanistan, and it came out that this was a US base no one knew of. So even if it's anonymous data, you have to take care that it cannot be correlated.
Yeah, and the moment you have the data, you already are running a risk, because when you start collecting them, somebody in one way or another may be able to access those data, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you have to imagine this kind of data like if it's gold. If someone knows there's gold, then he will start to dig and get this gold. It won't lay there. So even if you promise you won't use this data for other reasons, or if people say it's very secure, it can't be hacked, in some time in the future, either it will be hacked or it will be taken for some other reasons. History showed that already in a lot of cases. So the only technical thing we can do here is prevent that the data can be collected at all via several techniques. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Stefano. I think that was very interesting. Willem, maybe now let's take a little bit of a step back. Would you like to give us an understanding also, what are these contact tracing apps doing exactly? How do they actually track these contacts? Which technologies do they use? And ultimately, which data do they actually collect or not collect?
Yeah, I think that also touches upon what Stefan was saying. So what you see is that there is a variety of apps. So the way that the apps work is different, and the data that the apps collect is also different. You have centralized approaches, you have decentralized approaches, you have approaches that are focusing on contact tracing only. There's also approaches that are focusing on getting somewhat more information, that immediately with the data you can also do a kind of monitoring of how the virus spreads, and you can do data analytics on top of it. And because there is such a variety, I think there is also a lot of confusion of what does the app exactly do, and then in the public there is a lot of confusion. So the way we look at this is as follows: start from the user. So we are often inclined to start from the technology of a mobile phone, and then from Bluetooth, and then centralized or decentralized, and then who should do what, and then should we use AI and what have you. And that's all technological terms. In the end, this only works, and we want this in Europe to be a voluntary system. It only works if the user accepts it. And when does the user accept it? The user should be convinced that it's a privacy, that his privacy or her privacy is well addressed, and the user should also have a system that is easy to use. Well, be convincing a user and a citizen that the privacy is well addressed is a matter of explaining how it works, but not in technological terms. Because if you start to say, yeah, it's using this protocol, and you know it's signed, and we're using encryption, and don't worry, there's no man in the middle attack. For the techies, this is great news. For the average citizen, it is confusing story. So actually, if you go to the basic of a tracing app and start from there, it makes life a bit easier. So essentially, what should contact tracing do? Well, what you want to know is you want to be able to reach a person that is possibly infected because this person has been in contact with a person that is definitely infected. That is what the base, and that's all the essential functionality it should be. And there you have a kind of innovation principle, which is called Occam's razor, really cut the problem down to the minimum. And if you really focus on that, it becomes much easier to explain. So what do you need for that? Do you need the identity of a person? Not really. As long as you are able to reach that person. So if you are able to make clear to the person, what do you need? What do I really need? And for what data do I need? Then it's very simple. And actually, what you need is, if you look at an app, but you could also do it in another instantiation. We are also looking in logistic solutions from tokens. But what you essentially need is that the user can be reached. So the user has to somehow be informed about this contact. Well, a way you could do that is by storing minimal information. Yeah, if you just know that, hey, the user is carrying something around that I can reach, be it a mobile phone, be it a token, then the only thing you have to know is the identity of that object, but not of the person itself. That's the essential information. More you don't.
So you want to basically have anonymized or pseudo-anonymized data. So you don't want to know who the person is, right? But you want to still have knowledge about, I suppose, the position of the person, right?
No.
And
no.
when you don't need to know.
Me.
Let me understand this, because I have a personal question here. How does the app know that I have been in contact with a person that has COVID if the app does not have my position? Because we know this can go with the Bluetooth technology, right? But it doesn't need to have also the position.
Let me explain you a simple system outline that we also published on our website, by the way. That is token based, but you could also do that on an app. So the system is very simple. So this is token based. So, and to make it very concrete, assume you have a token. So a physical token, and the token has a number. And you can compare it to a lottery. If you go somewhere, you buy yourself a ticket in a lottery, it's completely anonymous. It's voluntary. You decide to use it or not. You have a serial number there, but nobody knows that it's you. And at some point, the lottery is done. We have the drawing, and the numbers are even publicly published. Yeah, we just write all the numbers in the newspaper, and only you can find out whether you're a winner. Even if I'm your neighbor, I don't know you, although I have the numbers. Okay, so that is the basics that you use here. So if you have a token with a number that you don't even need to know, we have a kind of system where you say you have a token, and imagine this token would have a traffic light. Very simple. Red, you're infected, and it is proven in a test station. Green, not sure that there is a problem. Orange, you have been in contact with somebody that has been proven infected. Just assume that those are the 3 states on your token. Okay. So everybody picks up a token. You go to the supermarket, you pick a random token. You don't know the number, the token does not know your identity, nothing. It is just an anonymous token that you carry around. Nobody knows anything about it. Nobody knows which token you have, not your identity. Only there is a token number. When 2 people that have these tokens meet, only the numbers are exchanged. And that's what the apps are also doing. Yeah, you meet for I'm having a coffee with you. Our numbers are exchanged. So only my number is in your contact list and your number in mine. That's all we do. And there's nothing more on the token. Now, at some day, I do not feel very well. So I go to a test station, and it turns out that I was infected. So my token gets red. At that moment, we broadcast my token number, and your token is able to pick up that signal and see, hey, wait a minute. In the list of tokens that I met, there is this number, and it gives your token a signal, oh, please go and have yourself checked, because you have been in contact for a longer time with a person. It doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter who, it doesn't matter who I am. The only thing that is relevant for you is that you have been in touch with somebody, somewhere, sometime, that now turns out to be infected, so better check yourself as well. That's all you need. And if you keep it that minimal and that simple, you will have, by definition, a anonymized system. And the data that is not there, as Stefan rightfully said, all the data that is there is vulnerable. So the less you do, Occam's razor, cut it to the minimum, the least problems you will encounter.
But for what we understand in the current conversations, the technology that will make this possible seems to be the low energy Bluetooth, right? Is this the case? Are there other technologies that could be used by mobile phones or by tokens, as you mentioned, to make sure that they know that they have been, that the two tokens or the two mobile phones, they know that they have been close enough to each other for a long enough period of time to, give presumption of a certain infection?
What technology is?
If you just one thing, Stefan, that if you use a mobile phone, then of course it's Bluetooth, because that's there. If you use a token, you can also use, for example, ultra wideband. So there are other technologies that you can use then as well. Stefan, sorry.
Okay, other radio frequencies.
Just wanted to add that it's what you explained is completely correct. It's the only way it can work, to upload the anonymous IDs, and everyone the apps downloads, I don't know, every 10 minutes or something, the newest infected IDs and compares them if you met them. And what technology is, that's what I just wanted to say, is not important in this concept. It's the concept. The concept can use audio, or the concept can use Bluetooth. I prefer Bluetooth beacons because we are very experienced with Bluetooth beacons. There are several products already on the market for years that use Bluetooth beacons. So it's a technology we know, and I rely on something we know rather than inventing a sonar for mobile phones. But there's another problem then, that Bluetooth beacons can go through walls, but I don't think that it's a that important issue in this case.
Well, the low energy function in the Bluetooth should be, what we understand, it should be okay to work only if there is no wall in between.
No. It will go through walls, and it will go more far than you might think.
The other thing that you will not notice, whether it's a token or a mobile phone, is whether I am wearing a mask or not. And this is a question: how do we, if that is the case, in some cases these apps, whatever they are, they will not be effective. Am I right?
Those are some problems, and there's another problem that especially the old people, the risk group, doesn't have that much mobile phones, so it lacks on some kind, and we have to make sure that we don't generate panic with that, because usually such apps are tested over a year, and there's a free version you can download, and you test it with some interested people, and in the second or the third year you release the nice product. But we have to make this start very fast, and because of this we have to be very sensitive, because if it comes out in the end that everyone's wearing a mask and it's not that relevant, the Bluetooth beacons go too far, and probably old people don't install the app. But even though the old people don't install the app, we still have a lot of every third person you're infected on his phone. Then probably economy will have bad issues on economy. So this is why what I said in the first case. Usually, don't talk about money in such talks, but it won't be very. You have to really get knowledge and get the good people together, and get marketing ready, and really make some effort, because if this app gets adopted or not. You can have two choices. Either it's nice and will be adopted by a lot of people, or it will fail. And you want the first thing, so you really have to get effort into developing the perfect app. Yeah, on the first try. Yeah.
Yeah, but on that point, maybe for Willem, the issue seems to be the fact that obviously the apps are developed at the national level. So how do we make sure, in the end, they can be a very good app working in one country, but we are European citizens. At some point, we want to be free to move within the EU, right? Don't we? And possibly beyond. So how do we make sure that the different apps from different countries are at the same level, and also they talk to each other, they're interoperable, and not just the apps, but of course also the health departments which are behind.
Yeah, I think there are two things that where you should interface. So it's just a reality today that a lot of countries are developing their own apps, and there is not a single European app. So there are then two interfaces of these apps. There's one interface of the app with the national healthcare system, and I think it's important to separate those two concerns. You have a healthcare system that is operated by healthcare professionals, and that deal a lot with also your medical information and so on. And that is fairly trusted. I mean, if I go to the hospital, I give my information, they know my identity, and I feel that I'm in a safely treated environment. That's different from having an app that you carry around all the time for everyone, yes? So I would separate those two things. So the app is really for contact tracing, and the app should interface to the healthcare system. And you can do that on a national basis, but it's a matter of defining the right interface points. Then the second interface you need is that if the European countries keep going their own way, that you need interoperability at a European level. So the European Union is actually working on this. And so there is a first set of guidelines and a framework for interoperability between European apps. Of course, the apps have then to be developed in such a way that they interface according to that interoperability framework. So that is currently being developed. Is that the ideal situation? Well, I would say it's more or less plan B, because the best plan would be to have a uniform app, and plan B is then to have a collection of apps that are interfaced. So that, I think, will be the practical way forward that we will see.
Willem, on this point, okay, it's a kind of novel situation for the institutions in the European Union, right? I suppose they have never faced a similar situation in the past. They are certainly used to coordinate, to set, kind of framework conditions for the countries to work. But so are the Commission, the European Commission, and the other institutions, are they up to speed nowadays? Are they ready? Do they have the right skills, the right structures to really lead on this situation? Or are they just going to tell the countries, okay, you do this is your minimum interoperability level, and then they are out of the discussion?
Well, I mean, you have to understand what are the roles of the different players. As we said, I mean, healthcare systems are national systems and run by the member states. So that is not under the authority of the European Commission. So the European Commission can help, but it does not decide, not control those systems. But I mean, you can even be very helpful if you are not the one that finally controls, because you can contribute serious things. And the nice thing is that there is a lot of expertise. The Commission was able, on the very delicate problem of data in platforms and privacy, to get GDPR out. The Commission is working on ethical AI. That's another area where privacy and concerns are there. So there's a lot of expertise, and the European Commission is able to bring that together and to bring that in reports that are discussed and taken up by the member states. On interoperability, the Commission also has quite a track record. For example, if you go to identity management, yeah, so there is a European federated identity management framework that also has been developed. So yes, the expertise is there. The Commission is able to mobilize quickly the expertise, also together with the member states. Once that has been done, there are two ways forward. Either it is a recommendation from the Commission, then it's free to follow, or it is finally embedded in law, and then, of course, the member states are obliged to take an implementation trajectory. These things take time, so for the if you want to be fast, then you have to go the route of facilitating and advising and recommendation, because it will probably be very difficult to get this all laid down in law that has to be followed. At the same time, I mean, this will not be the last time that we will have to address with more global health issues. So it nevertheless makes sense to do these efforts also as a building stone for a more integrated approach to healthcare in Europe.
Yeah, you mentioned, Willem, the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, which most people are familiar with because it's one of those European laws that kind of all of us have learned about. Stefan, when we speak about, you're certainly familiar with the GDPR because you are a privacy expert. When we speak about GDPR, do you see any potential issues with the use of these contact tracing apps? Are there any issues that we should really be aware of?
I don't think GDPR is a real problem we should face within this, because if we do the concept like Wilhelm explained, I don't see any GDPR issues. But even though if we don't do it like this and use a centralized thing, everyone can. Unfortunately, well, GDPR is a good thing, but in the end, you have to have a bunch of documents. We do it. We do it on a daily basis, and of course, you have to take care of some things. But big companies or big app programmers, everyone can get GDPR compliant. Every big company has on its website we're GDPR compliant. Actually, they are on paper, but there is no control instance or something, and in the end. They do it as far as the incident happens and the data is gone. And then there will be maybe a problem for them. But in the first case, it's just to have a bunch of documents. It's good to have the GDPR. It leaded us forward with data protection. But I don't think that GDPR will help in this case. We have to technically prevent a misuse in the first case at all. We have to technically prevent that there's even the possibility to open a door and have data, because there's no door, you can't have it. This is the point. And I think if the EU will provide such an application, I think it's the chance. It's a chance to make it open source and prove everyone EU is leading with good code. EU is leading with things like GDPR, and we develop an app in open way, so everyone can have a look what's the app doing, and then even the marketing will be better because press will take this, and we don't have to explain how good the app will work. Press will explain, oh, the app is open source, everyone can see it, and this will. I think this will be on one hand side a security improvement, and on the other hand side a very big marketing pusher if you do it open source.
Yeah, I agree. That would be nice. So we were talking about GDPR, Willem. Indeed, it may not be entirely relevant now to these contact tracing apps, but GDPR, as you also mentioned earlier, does prove that Europe was able to set a global standard for privacy. Europe is also been working on AI ethics, and it is a world champion in that respect. So Europe has certain capabilities in terms of setting standards in very critical technological areas, and Europe does have a lot of industrial capacity in the digital sector, including the open source, as Stefan said. But what do you think is now the correct approach for Europe? Because we are in between the Asian approach, where governments have basically kind of imposed the use of these apps, and then we have a US approach or private company approach, where we have Google and Apple that have already proposed their own system for contact tracing. So what is the...
I'll mention.
Yes. So what would be the correct approach for Europe in between? And then first Willem, and then maybe Stefan wants to develop as well.
Yes. Well, you're right, and that's why I was mentioning these examples, because the question was, do we have the expertise in Europe about interoperability, about privacy solutions, about ethics, about values of this digital world? And the answer is clearly yes, and we are even leading. I mean, GDPR is really worldwide seen as a good example where Europe took the lead. If you want to shape the digital society and you want to develop that, you need two sides of the story. You need the shapers, that is the policymakers that come with GDPR and whatever.
Yeah.
You also need the makers. You need the industry that is bringing those solutions out, because it's always an interaction between the two. Its ethics is in every technology. So what Europe is lacking, of course, is enough strong players in that digital world. If you look to the internet, it's dominated by US companies. The mobile world, it's Apple and Google. That are the two dominant 20 years ago. We have students at EIT Digital. I always ask them the question, who has an iPhone? About 1/3 is raising the hand. Then I said, who has an Android? Then 2/3 is raising the hand. And then I said, who has a European phone? And then everybody is laughing at me. Yeah. And then I said, if I would have asked this question in 2005, which is only 15 years ago, probably when I asked the question, who has a European phone, everybody would proudly show his Nokia. So that is, of course, something, if you want to be part of this regulation, yes, at the same time, you have to be there with the industry, with the products. You cannot only play one part of the table, you need the combination. So I think, and that's important, Europe needs to rebuild a digital industry. We were there. I think we missed the internet and platform opportunities. We're probably a little bit too much into the, it's the disadvantage of being a forerunner. We were a forerunner in mobile, but at some point we got caught up and maybe too much, So, and that has to be, so I think that is the true lesson we should learn for the post-crisis. And we were aware of that. I mean, the awareness of that is coming, but of course a crisis, and this specific app story is illustrating it again. It is illustrating how Germany, France, the UK are making phone calls with the CEO of Apple and Google to ask, hey, what can you do to make our systems work? This will be, again, a wake-up call for Europe. Hey, do we want to have our technological independence? And we have the technology and we have it there, but in certain areas, you see a non-European dominance. And in these kind of crisis situation, that's magnified and you see it happening in front of you, very visible for everyone. And I think that is a concern. And that's where Europe should build and rebuild the digital industry and strengthen this. And we should keep doing the regulation, because there we are good, and we should absolutely keep doing that together, hand in hand. We should stimulate the development of European technologies that embed and implement those values and those regulations from the get-go.
Yeah, so Stefan, that's a very valid point. Stefan, do you agree with Willem? And do you, as a digital company, European digital company, SME yourself, do you think we have this industrial capacity in Europe? And do you think our policymakers have understood that without a strong digital industry, we don't have a digital independence, and issues like the one we are seeing now, as William says, are going to repeat again and again?
I'd say those are two different topics. One topic is developing the app, and I think you need Google and Apple to develop the app because you want to have it fast. The other thing is to raise Europe as a digital leader. And I think currently we don't have the capacity, not in form of smart people. We're developing great, and we're leading edge in encryption in Europe, and we're developing great things here. But the smart people are there, but It's not that there are the big companies and the big digital leaders here to develop such apps. So we have in the first case, take Google or Apple and develop such an app together with them. We can't do it without them currently. Another step is increase Europe as a digital location. And I can say it from our startup. I think if we'd be in Silicon Valley, I'd have already like 50 co-workers. It's on the one hand side, we have good social things that come in such crisis as right now. On the other hand side, tax is very high, and it's very hard for companies that have ideas to bring it on the market and raise the company up. We developed our own product. It looks great. We're on it since a few months. It's now finally, but I think if we came out with such a product in Silicon Valley, we might be raising a little faster than we do.
Yeah, I understand. Just another question for you, Stefan, from the audience, from Omar on social media. He's asking, as you mentioned, open source as a way to develop a safe app. He's saying, should I still be worried about exploitation of privacy from Android, iOS, or third-party apps under an open source framework?
Well, it depends on the concept. If the concept is like Wilhelm described in earlier, then we're good. In the end, we have to use so-called APIs, connections to the mobile phones that Google and Apple provide. The app needs to use those APIs to talk to the Bluetooth and all that. But if the concept of the app is secure, it's all about the concept. If the concept is secure, then we're good in the first case. And if then the code is published, on the other hand side, everyone can see through the code, and there will be a lot of interested people around Europe or around the world, doesn't matter, that look into the code and say, well, I found something here, and this will improve this code. And I think this can lead this to a leading edge project that might get developed further for future. Because the code is there, everyone can use it, and it can be very nice other apps developed out of this code.
Thank you, Willem.
Maybe
yes, you can definitely comment on that. Please.
I would like to add. I mean, indeed, opening up the code is adding to the security level. Transparency is always good. No security by obscurity is what we say in the métier. Yeah, so be open about the protocols, and the security should come from the secrets that the secret keys that are shared in the systems, but not from the system architecture. So it should be open and transparent. And I think especially with this purpose that we have here, is that a healthcare general interest, a societal purpose, that a fully open source, open and transparent approach is the appropriate way to go, because this should not become a commercial, exploitable adventure. No, it is something to serve us as a whole to get out of this crisis. So I think it's very appropriate to give that transparency. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. And Willem, going back to the political conversation, as we are now expecting to have 27 different apps in Europe, do you see any chance that this is going to lead to, a real capacity, a real possibility for the European citizens to really travel across the countries, and for us as a society to have an effective solution against the spread of the virus?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to predict, especially the future. So, of course, I mean, what you see is that in Austria, it is deployed. So we will get expertise with this. Interoperability will be taken care of. It is in the current shape with all the fragmentation, differentiation, it is a tool in the overall tool set. I mean, contract chasing is one of the things we're doing. It's not that, oh, we have the app and now we can forget about everything. No, of course not. It's just an element in the bigger picture. Yeah, it's an essential element. It can help to localize and quickly act locally, avoiding global lockdowns of a whole country. So that's where it is. And even though it's fragmented, it does help. Of course, it's not the ideal thing but it still helps. It's still useful because a lot of things also help locally. I mean, yes, travelers are an issue. On the other hand, people that come in at an airport, you know where they come in, right? So, I mean, a lot of these travels, if people start to cross borders with cars and whatever, it is less visible. And then interoperability is a thing because you have quite some neighboring, but also there it still remains fairly local. Even in a complete open society again, I mean, I have a lot more contacts with people in my hometown than with people in Rome, where I maybe once a year. So of course this spread has also quite a local element in it. So that means that national approaches and local approaches definitely help, and especially when you're early on there, because then it's still manageable, and that is what these apps allow you to do. So even though it is not completely interoperability yet or whatever, even events, for example, you could imagine that the big thing will be reopening of events in Europe. So when can we go to a soccer stadium again? When can we go to a music festival again, and what have you? And of course, you could imagine, that's one of the scenarios we described with the tokens. If you go to a soccer station, you have a bracelet with a token, and that is active for 2 weeks after the match. So if somebody in the match was infected, you can quickly see out, oh, there were 30,000 people in the stadium, which 500 were in close vicinity of the person that turns out to be infected, and how can I quickly reach those? That's still a relatively localized thing, related on the events, but it helps you immediately to localize. We saw what happened in South Korea. There was a single person visiting a couple of bars, and immediately you have to trace a lot of people, and there this technology can help. And then you say, hey, but it was only for one event. Yes, it was already useful for a single event, because in that single event, something happened. There were maybe 1 or 2 people infected, and you can quickly inform the relevant people and not have to go to 30,000 people of the whole stadium and manually check them through. So even more localized thing. You see, for example, there is one of our partners is running in the harbor of Antwerp, a pilot in the harbor, in the industrial complex. So even more localized application of this technology is still useful. So you don't need to have the big bang to make it useful. Of course, if it's all working all over the place, perfectly interfaced and what have you, it's working better. But still, in very localized situations, it can contribute. And again, it's one element in the total package.
Yeah, thank you. That's an interesting perspective. Maybe I have a question from the audience on the social media, from CS Lanting. He is asking about the possibility, from your point of view, if you think it is possible to also use these apps to not just track the person-to-person transmission of the virus, but also person-to-object. Because, if you touch something and the virus stays on the object, then other people can catch it. Do you see any possibility to use technology to trace this person to object and object to person type of spread?
Well,
difficult question,
as
isn't it?
Wilhelm already mentioned, there's also 2 sides again. As Wilhelm already mentioned, it's just a tool in the tool set, so we don't have to make it able to be good in every situation. And it's therefore people contact people, not for people contact things in the first case. And on the other hand side, I'm not quite sure if there's any research paper that says that touching contacts is an infection spreader. Like that spread. It's not that things spread the virus, as far as I know.
I think it is also leading to the idea that maybe having the location
text or something. Yeah, of course there's a technical solution for everything, but security obscurity is the keyword. We have to keep the app for what it's for, and it's for people meet people, and we have to not make it like to a buzzword like AI or blockchain is. Those are good tools also, but for special situations. And this is another tool for a special situation. For some situations, you need a hammer. For other situations, you need a knife. And this is one tool to repair the COVID-19 engine.
Yes, you're totally right. Yes, Willem.
So yeah, so I think, I mean, I fully second what Stefan was saying, and I would like to add to that as well. I mean, it is part of a bigger system, and so the way it should work. So in the end, I mean, you don't even care so much how the infection exactly took place, because what you want to do is you want to quickly trace and be able to contain outbreaks. That's where this is all about, because if you contain outbreaks, you keep it locally and you get the virus out and avoid it from spreading. So the key thing is that quickly, early on, you have to see where are things happening. And if you have such a system where infections are being traced and people are identified, then what you will see, the healthcare system will start early on to recognize where the problem is. Because if all your apps in a certain area signal quite a few people, hey, you may be infected, the test stations will see more people coming and saying, hey, I've been informed, I want to be, and if the tests are then positive, only if the tests are then positive, and that's why the system has to work together with the healthcare system, you can see, hey, in a certain area, all of a sudden I have additional tests, and then you can take around that area additional measures. So that is important to realize that is the essence. So, and whether it's exactly who did it and whether it was an object or what have you, that's in the end not so much the essence of fighting the outbreaks. The essence is to know early on, quickly, hey, where do I see a couple of infections going? And now, if you have no app, you have this information only when people come to the hospital, you see only part of it. You are fairly late because, they've been feeling ill for a while, then they have decided to go, and they thought first maybe it was something else. So you lose a lot of time. And again, exponential systems, if the factor is 2, every following day, it's people underestimate this. People underestimate this because why are people still contributing, participating in Ponzi schemes? Because if you do the math and it's you send a letter to 10 people, you can see that after a few iterations, there's nobody on earth you can send a letter anymore.
Yes.
You
exhaust the population, right?
Still people do it. So exponential growth is highly underestimated, but it's extremely dangerous. And that's why early on being there is so important. And that's exactly where this technology can help.
I see all the graphs where we have the logarithmic scales when people, and it looks like a straight line. The fact is that it is not straight at all because this is an exponential. Anyway, we are going to the end of this conversation. So I would like to ask Stefan and Willem to give me the last statement from yourself. What is your takeaways from this today conversation, and what would you like to come to be your last message for our audience?
Well, my last takeaway or my last message for the audience is we're facing those security problems we're having because of 2 things. It's always 2 things. Because of features. We develop things and think, oh, we must implement this feature, and oh, well, it can walk. Now let's make that it can fly. And we implement features in all software and websites and all that stuff. And this gives hackers or anyone else who will technically go into a system the opportunity to have to see more things where they can set on their tool to get in. And this is a problem. So with this app, rely on the main feature it is made for, and not try to implement other features in it. And only then we can reduce the scope for hackers. And the other thing is, data is gold. If it's there, someone will dig, and we don't need to collect data. Yeah. That's my statement. Yeah.
Thank you, Stefan. Very good to have you. And Willem.
My statement would be user-centric. So that means assure that people understand that their privacy is guaranteed, and keep it simple. Keep it simple in use, keep it simple in functionality. That's for me very key. And then it is for me very important that we arrive at a state where we can deploy this technology, experiment with it, and learn from it, and have it as an additional tool available. So let's focus on that. There are obstacles. On the other hand, nothing in life is perfect, and it's important to get it deployed and to use it, because that will be the only way to address a couple of question marks that are there. So it's important to use this additional tool. That is, for me, the message.
Okay. With that, we conclude today's episode of Digital SME Live, Contact Tracing App Solution or Threats. A recording of the live conversation of the live stream will be available on our website and the social media channels. Next week, we will discuss about additive manufacturing and its impact on the supply value chains. For more information, follow our Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube channels. Thank you to the speakers and to all the viewers who watched this live conversation today. I'm Sebastiano Tofaletti. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.